kumbaya, fuck crocker shit, fuck all that, dumb bitch you. Hey, round around with them poles, I got them slicks in the Jeep. Yeah, railroad, no exposed and cause we'll creep, nigga, creep. Boy, you a junk ass, talking tough, boy, but you'll get your ass beat. Try that down gangsta shit, boy, put your ass, put to sleep. All the niggas acting like whole nine, but it ain't nothing to me, yeah. Glock with a magazine, pull up on the scene, yeah. Ride around with them poles, I got the sticks in the Jeep. Railroad, no exposed and cause we'll creep, nigga, creep. A lot been going on now, yeah, we strapped to the T. All these crackin' acting like hoes now, but it ain't shit to me, You a jellyfish ass boy, yeah, you see through C, You no soldier bitch, but you a faggot ass drug leech ass leech, Oh, you a army boy, but that's nothing, what steroids to a priest. I got my mind all made up, first, second scene on the street. And these niggas can't let them slide, wanna suck white cracker meat. So I'm on the top of everybody that ain't like me. Can't even speak, nigga. You became the damn nation climax, put your ass to sleep. Talking on my damn back now, that's what a bitch said to me. But y'all already know that, cause the stock market got me rocking up my feet, nigga. Hey, round around with them poles, I got them sticks in the Jeep. Yeah, railroad, no exposed and cause we'll creep, nigga, creep. Boy, you a junk ass, talking tough, boy, but you'll get your ass beat. Try that down gangsta shit, boy, put your ass, put to sleep. All the niggas acting like whole nine, but it ain't nothing to me, yeah. Glock with a magazine, pull up on the scene, yeah. Ride around with them poles, I got the sticks in the Jeep. Railroad, no exposed and cause we'll creep, nigga, creep. Beast all that beef shit, cause that's all that I eat, All these fuck nigga, you a pig ass boy. Right. Hey, I don't give a fuck about none of that dumb shit you talking about, all that kumbaya, fuck crocker shit, fuck all that, dumb bitch you. Hey, round around with them poles, I got them slicks in the Jeep. Yeah, railroad, no exposed and cause we'll creep, nigga, creep. Boy, you a junk ass, talking tough, boy, but you'll get your ass beat. Try that down gangsta shit, boy, put your ass, put to sleep. All the niggas acting like whole nine, but it ain't nothing to me, yeah. Glock with a magazine, pull up on the scene, yeah. Ride around with them poles, I got the sticks in the Jeep. Railroad, no exposed and cause we'll creep, nigga, creep. A lot been going on now, yeah, we strapped to the T. All these crackin' acting like hoes now, but it ain't shit to me, You a jellyfish ass boy, yeah, you see through C, You no soldier bitch, but you a faggot ass drug leech ass leech, Oh, you a army boy, but that's nothing, what steroids to a priest. I got my mind all made up, first, second scene on the street. And these niggas can't let them slide, wanna suck white cracker meat. So I'm on the top of everybody that ain't like me. Can't even speak, nigga. You became the damn nation climax, put your ass to sleep. Talking on my damn back now, that's what a bitch said to me. But y'all already know that, cause the stock market got me rocking up my feet, nigga. Hey, round around with them poles, I got them slicks in the Jeep. Yeah, railroad, no exposed and cause we'll creep, nigga, creep. Boy, you a junk ass, talking tough, boy, but you'll get your ass beat. Try that down gangsta shit, boy, put your ass, put to sleep. All the niggas acting like whole nine, but it ain't nothing to me, yeah. Glock with a magazine, pull up on the scene, yeah. Ride around with them poles, I got the sticks in the Jeep. Railroad, no exposed and cause we'll creep, nigga, creep. Beast all that beef shit, cause that's all that I eat, All these fuck nigga, you a pig ass boy, leech ass leech. Yeah, fuck boy, what you talking about, get your ass put it R.I.P. Nigga, fuck what you talking about to me. All my niggas out here wildin', all my niggas out here styling. All you niggas out there hiding, bitch bodies kept piling. All these fuck niggas riding around, boy, they can't fuck with a nigga. Boy, I'm a sharp boy, true prince, nigga, true nation of Israel. You a fuck boy, nigga, to watch him out, what you talking about? He get stomped out with his AR all lean mouth. Hey, motherfucker RP on the goddamn Vegas damn scene. But it ain't nothing, cause they never got traced back to a real nigga like G. That's it. That's all the beat.
All right, clap it up, clap it up. That was Priest Shaw from North Carolina. We're dropping a new video, an exclusive he sent earlier today. Shout out Officer Shaw. What is it?
South.
Huh?
South Carolina?
I'm thinking North Carolina. He's from the Carolinas. Listen, he's UPK certified from Carolinas. Shout out my brother Shaw. with that new song. Okay, well, clap it up. I'm Priest Ashar Gapar of the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. Started out on 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under commanding General Yohana. And since our creation, since the establishment of the school back in '69, we've been teaching the truth according to the Bible about who the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans are. Giving back their culture, their identity, their history, and it's all here in the Bible. Now today is Monday night's history class, and I thought it fitting to go over a few essays that a brother by the name of Naim Akbar actually created back in the day. I believe he wrote these in the 70s or 80s. Let me just double check. Back in the 80s, 84 was the first time of the publication of these essays. Now Naim Akbar, that's not his real name, that's just the Muslim name he took on when he joined the Nation of Islam. But we're actually going to read up a little bit on Naim Akbar, if you can, Baba Kashal.
Publisher, psychologist, psychology professor, and public speaker, Naim Akbar was born on April 26, 1944, in Tallahassee, Florida. Originally given the name Luther Benjamin Weems Jr., Akbar changed his name in 1971 after joining the Nation of Islam. Akbar attended the Florida A&M University Laboratory School from grades K through 12, graduating in 1961. Akbar attended the University of Michigan for the completion of his BA, MA, and Ph.D. degrees in psychology. Prior to attending the University of Michigan, Akbar lived within a completely African-American social environment. His freshman year of college marked the first time that he had real contact with whites. At the University of Michigan, Akbar was active with the Black Action Movement strike that closed down classes for 3 weeks during the late 1960s. After receiving his Ph.D., Akbar accepted a position in the psychology department at Morehouse College in Atlanta. There, he instituted Morehouse's first black psychology course and eventually developed probably the first black psychology program at a historically black college or university. Within 2 years, he became chair of the department. Akbar left Morehouse after 5 years to work with the Nation of Islam's headquarters in Chicago to start their Office of Human Development. After 2 years, Akbar joined the faculty of Norfolk State University, again instituting courses in black psychology. In 1979, Akbar accepted a faculty position at Florida State University. In 1971, Akbar became active with the Association of Black Psychologists, the largest black mental health professional organization in the world. He has served on the association's board for numerous terms and was elected its president in 1987. The association has bestowed all of its most prestigious awards on Akbar due to his professional contributions. Akbar continues to teach a specialized course on the psychology of the African American at Florida State University. In the late 1980s, he formed his own publishing company, Mind Productions, and private consulting company, Naim Akbar Consultants, to bring his teaching to a wider audience.
All right. Give it up for that brother. That brother is highly intelligent and has done a lot of work in the field of psychology, specifically geared towards the psychology, mental health of African Americans, going back to slavery all the way up till today. And he's, if I'm not mistaken, he's still a professor over there in Tallahassee. But we're going to be reviewing a book that was 2 essays of his that will end up turned into a book by his production company, New Mind Productions. Now, I actually found this book while roaming the streets of Harlem one Saturday afternoon, and I came across a street vendor who sells books in front of the Popeyes on 125th, and he stopped me because he knows me and a few other brothers who always purchase his books from him, and he showed me this book right here. It's called The Chains and Images of Psychological Slavery. Now, when I saw this book, it immediately struck me because I'm like, okay, chains and images of psychological slavery. That's something that the UPK's talked about since forever. How we still have these chains, even though they're invisible chains, going back to slavery, and how these images that we have been fed throughout the decades and centuries to help keep us in a captivated state, in a slave mentality, right? So then I started to do some research on this brother, and dove right into these two essays that he wrote, and found it to be extremely full of wonderful knowledge and insight, especially from a well-educated and a clinical psychologist. Not too many black and Hispanic people can gain such a reputation because of all the things that we're faced with on a daily basis, whether it's financial oppression, economic oppression, literal oppression, things happening in our families, the criminal justice system. Fortunately, this brother was able to, one of those brothers that was able to defeat the odds. And I wouldn't necessarily call him a sellout or a traitor like you'll see with a bunch of other like Muslim or Christian pastors or athletes out there. This brother has actually devoted his whole life to the mental well-being and psychology of African Americans here in the United States. So I want to give that brother a quick round of applause, because the work that he's done and been able to put together, it will definitely be used to help free the minds of our people who are still trapped in this Western society and their mindset. So in here, right, in this book, there's two sections here. The first one is psychological legacy of slavery, and the second one is the racial religious imagery and psychological confusion. And within each essay, there are about like 4 or 5, let's say, chapters or topics that he touches upon. And we are going to start, because this is going to be part 1. We're going to start on the psychological legacy of slavery. We're going to work through as much of the topics that he has listed here as we can until the next class. But I want to read the introduction. Right? And if you go back to click that, and I hit his picture. I want to expand his picture, if possible. Yeah, see, go just blow it up a little bit. No, it's fine. No, just Control plus to increase the screen. Yeah, share that, but we'll show. Let's see how it looks. Perfect. Okay. Right. So that's Naim Akbar. Now I want to read just some snippets of his introduction here. I would suggest everyone, go on Amazon.com. You can get this book anywhere from $10 to $25 on Amazon. Again, it's called Chains and Images of Psychological Slavery by Naim Akbar, Ph.D. All right. So right here on page 2, I'm going to want to read this section here. It says, as cruel and painful as chattel slavery was, it could be exceeded only by a worse form of slavery, right? Now we all know that physical slavery was horrendous, right? It lasted for about 300 years, 400 years, just considering the bringing of the so-called Negroes over here. But the psychological slavery, the slavery actually was started long before that, from the 1400s, where the conquistadors actually were enslaving the Native Americans. It just so happens that he's only focusing on the African American experience, all right? Which really can be applied to Native Americans and so-called Latinos, right? It says, this worst form of slavery, so he's saying that there's something worse than the actual physical form of slavery, right? This worst form of slavery, along with chattel slavery, is the subject of these two essays. So remember, it's the 2 parts of the book, of this book that he has right here. The psychological legacy of slavery, and the second essay, which is the racial, religious imagery, and psychological confusion. He goes on and says, the slavery that captures the mind and incarcerates the motivation, the perception, the aspiration, and identity in a web of anti-self images, generating a personal and collective self-destruction, is more cruel than the shackles on the wrists and ankles. Now, that might have been a good amount to digest, so let's just read it very slowly again. It says, the slavery that captures the mind. So the slavery that can take hold of your mind, right? Sort of like the religion of Islam, how it's control over the minds of our people, or the religion of Christianity, how it has such a stronghold on the minds of our people, and incarcerates the motivation. Things like, for instance, money. How money incarcerates our motivation. So we see money as something that we have to work hard for, which what he ends up talking about, how we, from going back to slavery, despise work, and then we envy those that have the money, right? The perception and aspiration and identity in a web of anti-self images. So all these things that we have gone through and that he's listing here, all can be generated into anti-self images, where we can see an image of another black person, of another Hispanic person, and hate that image. I don't know. There's a picture that Officer Aitazab down in Florida helped me put together. Shout out to Officer Aitazab, right? There's an old picture, if you can find it real quick, right, of a black boy wearing like a Superman outfit, staring into a mirror, and he's seeing a white person staring back at him. Let's see if we can find that real quick. Just put black boy stares at mirror of white superhero. The images, it should be on the first one. No, keep going. Type in black child stares at mirror, right? Black child stares into mirror of white superhero. Wait. Oh, then they don't want to put it up there? That's crazy. That's okay. Right, so there's an image. I know I have it here too on my phone. Let me see if I can find it real quick. That's gonna take way too long. Anyway, right, so there's an image of this black child staring into a mirror, and this reflection is a reflection of a white superhero staring back at him. So then Officer Aitazab and I came up with the idea of using an image from a brother, I believe out in, I forgot where, I think it's California maybe. A brother, his son, that one right there. Right? So we ended up making our own version where one of the brother's sons, who's maybe like 3, is standing in a Ma'adim Shabbat, with his hands behind his back, staring at a brother who's dressed up in a glorious garment or whatnot. Yeah, that's the image right there. Right? You don't have to blow it, that's good enough. Or what? So that's the image, right? Anti-self images. We would have the mindset, we have been given and conditioned to have the mindset that when we look in the mirror, we think white is great, is superior, right? But then when we actually see ourselves, we think of ourselves as inferior, not as good or wrong or bad. So we ended up making a reverse image where the little brother was staring into a mirror and seeing a reflection of another brother in a UPK garment, right? So then it says, generating a personal and collective self-destruction. And all the things that have transpired since slavery has led to us being personally destroyed and destructive in nature, and collectively as a race of people, as a group of people, as a community, as being self-destructive. It says, is more cruel than the shackles on wrists and ankles. Because at least you know when you have handcuffs on, you're imprisoned, right? But when you're just walking through life, generation after generation, doing all these things that are hindering you from growing, hindering your people for advancement, keeping you stuck in a state of being where you're not succeeding, you're not progressing, you're being subconsciously controlled by the masses, is worse than actually having shackles and chains on your wrists and ankles. It says here, the slavery that feeds on the psychology, invading the soul of a man, destroying his loyalties to himself, and establishing allegiance to forces which destroy him, is an even worse form of capture. Think about it, right? Invading the soul of a man feeds on our psychology, destroying the loyalties we have to ourselves. That sounds like the brainwashing and conditioning that has been placed upon us since we were freed in 1865 or what have you. How we've been conditioned to, because of slavery, we've been conditioned to love our oppressor. Through religion, we've been conditioned to love our oppressor. And now that we no longer are being forced with like whips and chains to love our oppressor, we just have a natural, innate desire to love him and to serve him, generation after generation after generation. It says the influences that permit an illusion of freedom, liberation, and self-determination while tenaciously holding one's mind in subjugation is the folly of only the sadistic. So like this whole concept, this whole strategic implementation of how we go about living our life, right, has been strategically put upon us to make us think we're free, to make us think that we're in control, to make us think that we're doing things of our own accord to attain such a status, right? When in reality it's not. Okay? There's a lot that he states in just in this introduction alone. This entire introduction could be one whole class if we really sat down and got to it. But one last thing that I want to touch upon in his introduction, right? Well, two more things. One, he talks about the ghost of the plantation, right? He mentions that the ghost of the plantation. And what I've been able to gather is that although the plantation, that physical plantation no longer exists, the ghost or the spirit of the bondage of that plantation is still upon us today. So we suffer from that ghost or that mentality that we're still stuck in that plantation. Hold on one second. I think also Isaac just hit me up. Okay. Right? Then something that we have been doing since 1969 when the truth was opened back up to the world, right? He talks about the image of a divine creator, right? Listen to this. It says, we approach this problem from the vantage point of the racial group that is portrayed, as well as its impact on the ones not portrayed. Let me get an image of Caesar Borgia, Baba Shah. It says, our position is that the portrayal of the divine in the physical form of any people is a potentially damaging influence on the psychological and spiritual development of human beings. Now here I agree and I also disagree with him, right? Because as a Muslim, Muslims believe in the prophets and also in the book called the Bible. They believe in the prophets of the Bible and they believe in the book called the Bible, right? Let me get Revelation chapter 1 verse 14, right? You see this image right here? I agree that portraying the divine in the physical form or portraying someone of great importance that is tied to God or the Creator, right, can be damaging if it is incorrect, and can be extremely uplifting if it is absolutely correct, right? It says, we thoroughly recognize the rationale and the value of utilizing such figures as a corrective agent by some African American religious groups. Now go back to the image real quick. See this image, right? This is the image that was given to us during slavery. For over 300-400 years, Black, Hispanic, and Native Americans have been forced and been conditioned to think that this is their Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. That this white image of this white Caucasian man is the Savior of them. And they're being oppressed and enslaved and beaten and robbed, and their lives are being taken, and they're being sexually assaulted by their oppressors who look just like this man. Right? So how can you hate your master who's sexually assaulting you, who's hanging your children, feeding your children to crocodiles and dogs, separating and breaking up your family, when the person that you've been told to love and that who is God looks like your master? That is a very damaging form of portraying the divine or any figure of the Bible to the minds of our people. Because we've been given this white image of Jesus Christ, thinking that the entire time this is Jesus Christ, spending 400 or 500 years in captivity in this country, loving the people who look like him, but actually are hurting us. And then I disagree with this statement because this is a false image. This is a false image that was given to us by our captors, by our enslavers, by those who are still continuing to do harm. And if any Muslim was more sincere enough to look into the Bible to see what the image of Christ looked like, kind of similar to what other Muslims, especially that movie about Malcolm X that Denzel Washington played, right? He talks about the real image of Christ and how could he look like this man if he was from this part of the world. Let's read this scripture in Revelations.
Revelations chapter 1 and verse 14. His head and his hairs were white like wool.
Now when you go to this image, we have to understand, does this image, is it portraying his head and his hairs? Right, this is his head. This whole thing, this is his head. Right? This is, to be more specific, this is the space, this is the back of the head, but this entire thing here is his head. So his head and the hairs that are on his head are white like wool. When we break it down into the Hebrew, it's telling that the color of his hairs were white, and the texture of it was like sheep's wool. Very rough, very textured, right? Very tightly curled, cold strands of hair. When we look at this image does not have white hair. When we look at other images that people have portrayed to be as Jesus Christ, we see that their hair on their head or on their face are not white. We also see in some images that the Jesus Christ they give us, he's completely shaven. That's not a custom of the Hebrews or the Israelites that you read about in the Bible. The culture, the custom was for a man not to shave his face, right? Keep going.
As white as snow.
Keep going.
And his eyes were as a flame of fire.
Now, when you look at these images that they give us of white Jesus Christ, his eyes can be blue. I think here they're like a little light blue, right? Sometimes they're green. Sometimes they're brown, right? But in the scripture, it's saying that his eyes were red like a flame. Not that his whole eyes were like actual red, like a laser beam red, like from Superman's eyes, you know what I'm saying? But that since we did drink wine, since we did have strong drink, whenever us black, Hispanic, or Native American people tend to drink, sometimes our eyes can get glossed over and become like a pinkish red kind of tint to it. Not that our actual pupils turn red, right? Keep going.
Verse 15. And his feet like unto fine brass.
Now, if you look up what brass is, you'll see that brass is a brownish looking color. Keep going.
As if they burned in a furnace.
Now, I actually looked up videos of brass being burned in a furnace, right? When the brass is in the furnace, it's being hot, and it's like a glowing red, right? And then when you take it out after it's cooled down, you see how dark it looks, how blackened it has become, because it has been put in extreme heat and basically kind of set on fire. It's saying that his feet, which would be a representation of the rest of his complexion on his body, was a brown color, a brass-like color, but the color is as if it was burned in a furnace. So he was a very dark man, a very black man. Keep going.
And his voice as the sound of many waters.
Now, when I look at this image, I think of a high-pitched voice. You know, I also, when I look at this, I don't see brass as it burns in the furnace. When you look up other images of the so-called, of this Jesus Christ image, right, that you Christians have loved for centuries, you see he's actually pale white. Right?
They tried here, right? They tried to give him a little tan here.
They tried to give him a little tan here. You know what I'm saying? They tried, but he still got blue eyes. He still got white wavy German Shepherd hair. I'm glad that he's not shaven looking like a woman. But in other pictures, if you look up other pictures real quick, escape that. See other pictures, you know, he's unshaven. He's really white here. He looks very effeminate here. That looks like a woman just with a beard painted on. You see that he's very white, right? Looking like a Roman, like a Greek. So it says, if we go back to the book, it says, we thoroughly recognize the rationale and the value of utilizing such figures as a corrective agent by some African American religious groups. There is no like a, how can I say this? It's not like we're giving a black image of Christ to just solely combat this white image. We're giving you the truth of the Bible. The Bible states in Revelation chapter 1 that it depicts Christ as a dark man who had a certain type of hair color, who had a certain type of hair texture. And when we look at these images, it goes against to what the Bible states. It goes against to what these white Christians, these slave masters, have pushed upon the minds of African Americans and Hispanics and Native Americans. They've given us a false image of our Lord and Savior when he actually is depicted a different way in the scriptures. And Christians love to say they believe in the Bible. Christians love to say how much they love God. Christians really just love your slave master. For all you Christians out there, from whether you're from down south, the west side, the west coast, the east, Midwest, you just love white people. You've been conditioned to love your ancestors, slave masters, and their descendants. You just love white people so much, you can't open the Bible for yourself and just figure out how Christ could have really looked like. It says here, the fact that some people have chosen to retaliate in an affirmative fashion by depicting the heavenly host in black racial characteristics, in contrast to the Caucasian racial features which have characterized our view of religious figures throughout our Western history, represents a reasonable reaction. Now, it is reasonable not to use it as a retaliatory type of way, but it is absolutely reasonable and righteous to bring the truth. Because when we look up into books like Russian icons, we can see all the black and brown images of all the priests and prophets in the Bible. We can Google right now and see that in Russia, they have a black Madonna and a black baby Jesus. Why? Why is stuff like this hidden from us slaves by our white slave masters? It's not just a reasonable reaction. It's a righteous reaction. It is a reaction that is fueled solely by the truth to dispel the lies that white Christians have put upon us since times of slavery. Right? You got that? Look at all these images of a black Madonna and a black baby Jesus, of a black Mary and a black Jesus. These are the images that have been hidden from us since before slavery. These are the images that we were never shown, we were never taught about, they were never spoken at the dinner table, because we are so in love with our slave master that we, even when we close our eyes and think of Jesus Christ, we're still thinking of that white, disgusting bastard, Cesar Borgia. Right? We're still thinking of him. It says, We commend those whose vision was broad enough to spot the destructive influence of these images on the psyches of non-white people. Now, I don't know why you're commending these people. The Bible has been around for centuries. The Old Testament, like a millennia or two, right? The people of this book knew the truth. The people who had this book in their possession knew what the truth was. It wasn't until the 1300s and 1400s where things were changing in Europe, where black people were now becoming oppressed, where white people were starting to come into power and take power back from the righteous men of the Lord, right? So now we're going to jump right into the first essay. You can take that off the screen, Bible Shop. We're going to jump into the first essay. Any comments in there?
His brothers and sisters saying shalom.
Okay, no swear. Shalom, Yahweh, thumb to the brothers, Yahweh Shemon, thumb to the sisters. Let's get into the first essay. It says, the psychological legacy of slavery. Now, as I was going through these things, I was, doing some highlighting of my own and some underlining and sectioning off sections. Right? So here it says, slavery was legally ended in an excess of 100 years ago. But the over 300 years experience in its brutality and unnaturalness constitutes a severe psychological and social shock to the minds of African Americans. Now, because of how cruel and brutal, page 7.
Want me to share?
Yeah, you share. Make sure they're saying the same thing. If you can zoom in on just the section, we're on page 7 right now. No, go forward, go backwards more. No, go to 11. No, that's 14. Wait. Go back. Hit the back button that's on the bottom. One more time. Go up. Right there, perfect. Alright. It says, this shock was so destructive to natural life processes that the current generation of African Americans, though we are 5 to 6 generations removed from the actual experience of slavery, still carry the scars of this experience in both our social and mental lives, which is true. You can see it on a daily basis in how we interact with each other, how we try to impress white people so much, how we hate to work, and we look for get-rich-quick schemes and all. You can see all of this still transpiring today. It says, he states, psychologists and sociologists have failed to attend to the persistence of problems in our mental and social lives, which clearly have their roots in slavery. And the reason being is because Western medicine is based off of white people. Western psychology is based off the psychology of white people. The therapy and mental health is based off of white mental health and therapy. It is extremely difficult to think that one race of people who did not suffer the same traumas as another race of people, you can still apply your sciences to them. It doesn't work that way. That's like trying to take how to train a dog and see if you can train an alligator the same way. Completely different responses, completely different size of the brain, completely different motivations, right? You can get a dog to roll over with a treat. You're not gonna get an alligator to roll over for a treat, right? It's not gonna happen. Hold on a second. Let's go on to page 8. You can go back to the next page, Dr. Michelle. We're going to go to, where it says Clark, where is it? Hold up. Right after, no, go backwards. Go to 11, go to 11 again. Okay, perfect. Where it says in order, there we go, on the bottom paragraph. Okay. It says, in order to fully grasp the magnitude of our current problems, we must reopen the books on the events of slavery, which is absolutely true, right? Go into the Bible, what was written aforetime, right? He's stating that in order to understand how life was back then, the severity of life back then, how our ancestors were treated back then, in order to understand, we have to reopen these books. We have to go back into time and fully review and give it a full analysis. We have to analyze all the things that had happened to us, why they had happened, the types of ways that things were forced upon us, the cause and effects of certain things that were done to us. We have to go back and truly understand what has led to our condition today. If you can read that scripture, Brother Michelle.
Romans chapter 15 and verse 4. For whatsoever things were written aforetime.
Whatsoever was written aforetime, right? This is in the New Testament right here. This is talking about all the things that were written in what was considered the Old Testament. The Torah, the Tanakh, the Chronicles of the Kings, the Judges, right? We have to look back in the Bible and look and read all these things that had happened. The curses of our people, the blessings of our people, the history of our people, what we did right, what we did wrong. We have to go back to and fully analyze these things so that we can be able to live a certain way in the future. He's saying that for slavery, in order for us to understand and really grasp the concept of what was done to us, we have to review as well. We have to review the period of when slavery was in full effect and full blown here in the United States and the entire world. Right? Keep reading.
Were written for our learning.
Because it's absolutely correct. What was written in that Bible in the ancient times is supposed to be for our learning today. Now he's making a comparison that what had happened to our people back then should be used for our learning today. How can we get out of poverty if we can't open up the history books and see what shaped our poverty? How can we stop being the number one to commit homicide, to commit black on black crime, Hispanic on Hispanic crime, if we can't open up the history books and look how we were treated, or how we were forced to treat one another just for the enjoyment and entertainment of our oppressors? We have to be able to do this in order to get ourselves out of this condition. Please keep reading.
That we, through patience and comfort of the scriptures, might have hope.
And this is where comfort is going to come from. Having patience that in this Bible, if we can just be patient and do the things that were commanded of us, we would have comfort knowing that the prophecies will all come true. If we can just come together in sincerity and look back on the history of our people in this country, see what worked, what didn't work, see how things were done to us, it would allow our people to have a better understanding, have the patience to know if we were to fix these issues, we can have comfort. It's almost like we're using the Bible to validate some of what the things that this psychologist is saying, because it doesn't matter if he's a Muslim, it doesn't matter if he's a Christian. What matters is that this is a black man who has devoted his life to understanding the psychology of the effects of slavery on our people. And that is extremely important, because we can all be psychologists and read the Bible and see how slavery and during the time of the Romans affected our people. how slavery during the time of the Assyrians or the Persians affected our people, how we treated each other, how we changed who we were, how we lost our identities and became Greeks or became Romans, is very important to be able to help us as a people move forward in life, to progress in life, to take our right position in this world, which is to rule the earth. It says, our objective should not be to cry stale tears for the past, nor to rekindle old hatreds for past injustices. Listen, I disagree here. I think it is very important to rekindle old hatreds of the great injustices that were done upon our people. I think little black boys and Hispanic boys and Native American boys should have some type of anger inside of them, seeing their fathers being sexually assaulted in front of them by white male slave owners.
Right.
I think little black girls and Hispanic girls and Native American girls should have some form of disgust knowing that their grandmothers and their aunts were sexually assaulted by white slave owners. There should be some type of there should absolutely be a rekindling of hatred and anger and animosity towards the injustices of our people and towards those who actually committed those injustices, right? Because if our future sons know how cruel and how evil and wicked our white slave masters were back then they would know never to touch or even stand next to a white woman when they're older. Right. If our young, beautiful black, Hispanic, and Native American daughters could learn about and see and read all the atrocities that white men done to their female ancestors, that they would know they should never sleep with a white man ever. They would have some form of bond to keep us together because of the crimes that had happened. What you got here?
Oh, Salaki.
Go ahead, read it.
Ecclesiastes 7 verse 7. Surely oppression
And the injustices that happened to us was oppression. The oppression that we suffered in America, the oppression that our ancestors suffered during the times of the Romans and the Greeks and the Babylonians and the Assyrians, that oppression, surely this enslavement will what?
Maketh a wise man mad.
Will make a wise man angry. So what this brother is saying, that he doesn't want to, his objective on this essay is not to rekindle old hatreds. Listen, old hatreds must be rekindled. Because oppression is going to make a wise man mad. If we want to be wise, if we want to be able to find ways to get out of this oppression, we have to understand how upsetting oppression will make us. We have to understand that the oppression that our ancestors were forced to suffer through and endure, it needs to be used to make us mad today. Because what happens with anger? You get motivation out of anger. You know, people on the left-hand side, when they're hungry, they're angry that they're hungry, so they go out and commit a crime, right? Or on the right side, when people are hungry, they get mad that they're hungry, and you know what they do? They learn how to grow crops, bake bread. They learn how to go and fish. There's two ways you can go about it. We're going about it on the righteous way. We don't want harm to fall upon our oppressors. We don't want to take up arms against our oppressors. What we want to do is to raise our children to stay the hell away from you.
Right.
What we want to do is to raise our daughters to never even think about sleeping with a white man ever. What we want is to make our young boys grow up to only love their people and not white people, not African people, not Asian or Arab people. What we want our people to do is to not side with America in anything that it does. America wants to go to war, leave black, Hispanic, and natives out of it. America is suffering a depression, black, Hispanic, and Native American people don't want nothing to do with the fall of your economy. We want to be completely separated in mind, body, spirit, financially, economically, emotionally, physically. We want to be separated from our slave masters, and we need to be angry to do so. It has to start with anger, because right now we love our oppressor. We love our oppressors so much, we want to be their entertainers. We want to be their athletes. We love our oppressors so much, we want to still serve them. We want to go fight in their wars and die in their battles. That's how much we love our oppressor. It's time that we start to hate our oppressor and not do any of those things.
Right.
You want to say something? No? Okay. It says, instead, we should seek to enlighten our path of today by better understanding where and how the lights were turned out yesterday. Well, it's very simple. The lights were turned out when we started to disobey God. Go to Deuteronomy chapter 28, please. Go to verse 1 and then verse 15. We know where this so-called, where the lights were turned out. The lights were turned out because we decided to disobey our God. If we would have never disobeyed our God, we would have never gone into the multiple slaveries and captivities we have been through. We would not have to worry about abortion clinics. We would not have to worry about drug crises, right? We wouldn't have to worry about things like this. Read Bible, Kasha.
Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 1. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth.
See, now your Christian pastor, whether he's dead or alive, whether she's still alive, listen, your Christian pastor does not know the truth. Your Christian pastor has been lying to you since before he was even born, because his Christian pastor lied to him. Your whole belief in the Christian religion is garbage. They don't teach you the Bible, and they don't teach you what God says in the Bible. They teach you what their slave master has allowed from generation to generation. Your slave master was the one who taught your black Christian pastor the Bible. And that's how it has always been. Those theological schools all run and fueled by white dollars and white beliefs.
Right.
Every single one of them. Right? So if we would have read the Bible for ourselves and not just from our Christian point of view, we would know that the reason why black, Hispanic, and Native Americans suffer here in America is because God gave us an order to obey him forever. And we would never have suffered any of the plights, any of these plagues, any of these atrocities that have befallen black, Hispanic, and Native American people. Go to verse 15. Now this is what we were ordered to do, but instead, this is what actually happened. Keep going.
But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee.
This is actually what happened. Because we decided to disobey God, this is why we suffered 400 or 500 years of slavery in America. This is why we suffered slavery in Babylon, Assyria, Persia, in Greece, in Rome, in Europe, here in the Americas. This is why we suffer from HIV and AIDS rates, from cancer, homosexuality, right? Our children being born gay and whatnot. Listen, that's failed parenting. That's failed leadership. That's false. That's a belief in false doctrine that has allowed us to accept these things because we failed to obey God, right? It says we should also understand that slavery should be viewed as a starting point for understanding the African American psyche and not as an endpoint. Therefore, the study of the African American psyche should include psychohistory, but it should not be exclusively concerned with events in the past. Let's move on. Let's go to the first topic. It says work. Right? No, go back. Right there. Work. Right? We're going down to where it says basically. Right there, that one right there. Boom. So this is now talking about work. He's going to break down the concept of work, where he feels and believes that work comes from, where our thoughts about work stem from. It says, basically, I'm going to read this quote from Kenneth Stamp, right? Kenneth Stamp, he wrote, this is why I like this book so far, this book, because in his appendix, he puts all the sources that he got everything from. So, Kenneth Stamp, right, wrote, "The peculiar institution, slavery in the antebellum South," published by Vintage Books in New York in 1956. And here he's quoting page 79, right? It says, "Slavery was forced labor. Kenneth Stamp described the work of the slave as occurring from day clear to first dark. The day's toll would begin just before sunrise and would end at dusk." So he writes this observation, "Except for certain essential chores, Sunday work was uncommon but not unheard of if the crops required it. On Saturdays, slaves were often permitted to quit the fields at noon. They were also given holidays, most commonly at Christmas and after crops were laid by." This is being used to show, right, how in slavery, our work, we had days off and times off, just like we have here in our work. We get days off, we get time off for lunch. The work starts at one time, ends at another time, right? It says, basically, however, work was a daily chore, beginning in early childhood and continuing until death or total disability. The slave was forced to work under the threat of abuse or even death, but the work was not for the purpose of providing for his life's need. Right? Us being slaves, it was under the threat of death or abuse or being beaten to a pulp. You can see all these stories, read all these stories, watch all these documentaries on how slaves were treated, right? You can watch one of my top 5 favorite movies, Django Unchained with Jamie Foxx, and you can see all the horrendous things that were done to slaves who didn't work as hard enough, right? Instead, he worked to produce for the slave master. He would neither profit from his labor nor enjoy the benefits of his labor. A good crop did not improve his life, his family, or his community. Instead, it improved the life and the community of the slave master. This is biblical. Go back to Deuteronomy 28, Baruch Shah. Go back to the whole chapter, Baruch Shah. Go to start at verse 16 real quick. Scroll down. Stop. We're going to go to the scripture here. Scroll down. Keep going. Keep going. Stop right there. We're going to start at verse 38.
Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 38.
Now keep in mind, we're talking about how we were forced to be slaves, but none of the work we actually did benefited our life. All the work we did benefited our slave masters. And the scripture here, these curses are going to prove it. Go ahead.
Thou shalt carry much seed out into the field.
What?
Thou shalt carry much seed out into the field.
I'm pretty sure we all know what cotton is. You know, you got to plant cotton. I'm pretty sure we all know what tobacco is. You got to plant the tobacco plants. I'm pretty sure we all know oranges and apples and all types of vegetables and stuff. We got to plant those things. Slavery, we didn't plant them for our sakes. During slavery, we didn't plant these things to benefit our life. We planted these things for our slave master because we were being forced to do so. Keep going.
And shall gather but little in, for the locust shall consume it.
So whatever seed we did plant, it was always taken up. It was always eaten up. It was taken by these locusts. White people are a locust. It's a plague that they just consume and destroy. Keep going.
Thou shalt plant vineyards and dress them, but shalt neither drink of the wine.
Stop. Oh yeah, we took care of grapevines, apple and orange orchards. You think we got to get the benefit off of that? No, our slave masters did. They're the ones that drank the wine, drink the juices. They used our slave labor to make them have the most glorious delicacies, the most wonderful drinks imaginable off of our blood, sweat, and tears. Keep going.
Nor gather the grapes, for the worms shall eat them.
Now these worms, these other nations, right now we're just talking about white people. They are worms. All inside our work, all inside the soil, destroying everything, taking everything for themselves. Keep going.
Thou shalt have olive trees throughout all thy coasts, but thou shalt not anoint thyself with the oil, for thine olive shall cast his fruit.
Right? We were not able to benefit anything from our own labor. Keep going. We'll scroll down. What to say? Stop going too far. Stop right there. Go to verse 43.
Verse 43. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low.
Right? And this is what happened. This stranger, this oppressor, this slave master, used our labor, took advantage of us to put themselves very high, and we were put very low. Let's get back to this book, right? It says, work in a natural society is looked upon with pride, both because it permits a man to express himself and because it supplies his survival needs. As a natural form of expression, work is not too distinguishable from play. Now, I can understand that, right? Brother T, I know you said you were a DJ, you're a DJ, right? You might find enjoyment in DJing. That is work that doesn't probably feel like work, right? Me, when I was working with children with mental health and stuff like that, it didn't feel like work. I was having a blast working with children. Helping them build vocabulary skills and helping them learn how to be more sociable, helping them develop skills that they would need in high school and helping them prepare for college. It didn't seem like work. It was more like fun, play, because I got to do things that I love and help people that I cared for, other Black and Hispanic people. However, during slavery, work was used as a punishment. The need for workers was the most identifiable cause of the African Americans' enslavement. White people didn't want to plant their own farms. White people didn't want to spend hours fishing for fish. White people didn't want to go spend hours trying to hunt and put deer urine all over them so they can blend in with, and deer won't smell. Listen, white people are lazy. It says the most identifiable cause for our enslavement was for the need of workers. White people needed workers. Work came to be despised as any punishment is despised. Work became hated as does any activity which accomplishes no reward for the doer. Work became identified with slavery. That's what slavery was. You working not for yourself but for others. That is slavery. Now here it says, right? Let's see. Go to the chat. For anyone that's in the chat right now, you put me on the screen. For anyone that's in the chat right now, what do you call your job? I want you to answer. Anyone that's in the chat right now watching, what do you call your job? Your place of employment. What is one word you give to your job or your place of employment? Come on, 30 seconds. A what? The bottom one? Highlight his comment. Zabala one said slavery. Well, check this out, Zabala one. This book is written in 1984, and it's talking about everything all the way up until then. It says, even today, the African American slang expression, which refers to a job as a slave, communicates this painful connection. We call our job slaves. Brother called me earlier today. Hey, what's going on, Shaw? Not chilling much, blah, blah, blah. Where you at? I'm at the slave. This is an expression we use even until this day, because things that happened to us back then have always been passed down to our generations. This was our ancestors who were forced to be slaves back then, worked for the gain and profit of their oppressor, is what we're still doing today. We're working at a slavery for the benefit of those that are on top. It's a slave. It says, through the course of the centuries, work came to be a most hated activity. Despite the fact that we are over 100 years removed from the direct slavery experience, the African American still, to a great extent, hates work. And I find no lie in that. Why do we have to work? I'm not working to make myself richer. I'm working just to survive and to make someone else richer. Right? Work is identified with punishment. Work is equated with inferiority. Now, only those who were inferior were forced to work, while those who were looked upon as being superior did not have to work. Now, again, going back to a quote from Kenneth Stamp's book on the peculiar institution, slavery in the antebellum South, right? Stamp observes that masters who had at their command as few as a half dozen field hands, 6 slaves, were tempted to improve their social status by withdrawing from the fields. That means because they had these slaves working the fields, they no longer had to be in the fields. And devoting most of their time to managerial functions. So now they became, instead of working with the slaves, they became the overseers. They became the actual real masters. I need you to pick 100 pounds of cotton today. I need you to make sure that all the cow dung and chicken crap are taken out and put into the field to use as manure. They became the managerials, like the managerial staff, the CEO, the CFO. Meanwhile, we had to do all the grunt work. But most slaves never saw their masters toiling in the fields. Consequently, slaves equated work with enslavement. So if you had to work, that means you were a slave. Because slaves worked for not their own benefit, but slaves worked for the benefit of their slave masters. And freedom with the avoidance of work. So if you wanted freedom, that meant you didn't have to work. If you didn't work, that meant you had freedom. Now, slave masters weren't working, so they were free in the eyes of slaves. But them who were forced to work, they knew they were slaves. Go on, continuing, going on to page 11, right? It says here, many African Americans have developed a variety of habits to avoid work. Now, tell me, anyone in the chat or anyone in the room, you go to the chat please. What are some habits that we use to avoid work? Think about it. What are some things that we would do to actually avoid going to a 9 to 5? Some things you might want to do more so that way we wouldn't have to work from a 9 to 5 or the graveyard shift. What are some things? Come on guys, I know you know.
Gambling.
Yes. Gambling is a habit that we developed so that way we would not have to go work in that field. That way you don't have to go work and throw out garbage York sanitation. That way we don't have to go work mopping floors and puke from children in cafeterias and schools. What else? See? What do you think of some habits?
Lesson 1 of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The rich don't work for money.
How's that a habit?
What it means is that if you're working for money, you're being a slave. So you have to do other things to get out of that.
So what are some habits that would develop so that way we would not have to work?
You have to have your own business, your own skill sets, so that you're
Own
not-
business, okay.
so you're
That
not
was a
relying
good
on
one.
other people.
The bottom one said to sell drugs. What else did he put? To rob and steal? Yes. Absolutely. It says, many African Americans have developed a variety of habits to avoid work, such as reliance on gambling and other get-rich-quick schemes. Some of the difficulty that we experience in generating independent businesses and institutions, so like how you said, it would be wise if we created our own businesses, created our own institutions, right? But the difficulties, right, that we won't do that is because of our hatred of work. It takes work to start your own business.
Oh, yes.
It takes work to hone a skill, to utilize it to make you money. It takes work. You don't need work to go say, hey, give me everything in your pocket. You don't need work to go and sell drugs. Well, you do need work. You got to sell the work. If you know what I mean. If you know, you know. They're not actually working as someone, a normal person would work, working a 9 to 5, let's just say, right? It says, it is still difficult to view the long-term reward of sustained work as being adequate to erase the stigma of such toil. Like, we cannot picture all this hard work into starting our own business. We can't picture it to be more beneficial enough to get rid of all the hours that we're going to have to devote to it, all the money that we're going to have to invest in it, all the time it's going to take for us where we don't see any return right away. The benefit, the end result of having your own business is not a motivating factor. It's not going to get the idea of how much work we have to do just to get it, right? It is much easier to work, often considerably harder, for someone else and get a predictable, periodic salary and a work schedule, which lets one create an illusion of leisure. Listen, you go to work from 9 to 5, you got Saturdays off, Sundays off, you're making a couple of $1,000 a month, you know, you get 2 days off, you know, it's like it creates you some type of leisure. You get to use this money that you earned to pay for an apartment that someone else owns. You get all this money to pay for food that someone else is providing because you don't own a farm. You don't own any mills to ground up grain into flour. You don't own a farm where you get to get your own fresh milk. You're paying someone else your money for everything that you have in life. The clothes, none of us have any cotton mills where we get to spin our own fabric and make our own jeans, right? We don't have none of these things. So we're working, we're slaving, and it's giving us some type of leisure. Oh, we get to a couple $1,000 in our pocket. Let's go to the store and shop. When someone else owns that store. Someone else had those clothes made that you're buying. Someone else made that Kellogg's Frosted Cornflakes that you're eating, right? But we have this illusion that we're doing well for ourselves, when in fact we're still slaves because we still have to work to eat. We still have to work to survive. We're still working for someone else's benefit. We're still working to pay someone else's rent. We're still working to pay for someone else's food. We're still working to pay for someone else's clothes. We're still working to pay for our children to go to someone else's institution of higher education. We're still slaves. Every Friday evening until Sunday, becomes Emancipation Day all over again. So every Friday night till Monday morning we become free again. We're free. You know? Many African Americans become over-dependent on welfare as a way of life. Look up the statistics on that. How many African Americans are on welfare? Then look at how many Hispanics are on welfare, right? It says, many African Americans become over-dependent on welfare as a way of life. This too can to an extent be related to the historical root of associating work with slavery. What you got?
50.1% of those receiving SNAP, TANF, and rental subsidies were black, and 27.7% were Hispanic in 2014.
Here's the more recent level strap. But over 70% in 2014 were black and Hispanic people who were receiving public assistance, welfare. What you got there?
I don't know the timeline on
I'll go back real quick. Type in the Pew Research Center. Just type in demographics of welfare recipients. Demographics of, or racial demographics of welfare recipients. Read what it says there, right up top.
About 27% of both adult and child recipients were black. Hispanics accounted for 21.9% of adult recipients and 35.8% of child recipients.
We'll say that one more time.
About 27% of both adult and child recipients of SNAP were black. Hispanics accounted for 21.9% of adult recipients and 35.8% of child recipients.
That's a high number. And he's saying that he's associating that even welfare can be linked back to slavery. And the historical root of associating work with slavery. So you know what? We get food stamps, so that way you don't have to work, because it's free money. We get our rent paid, or get rental assistance, so that way we don't have to work to pay rent. That's another habit that we have become so reliant upon to escape work. Now, I can definitely attest to this, working in social services. Many of my clients are black, Hispanic, and do receive some type of assistance from New York City, from New York State. Whether it's rental assistance, having their rent partially paid, having their rent fully paid, getting hundreds of dollars in food stamps because they got multiple children. It makes perfect sense. And when I ask them, are they working? No. Are you interested in finding a job? No. They're comfortable with where they're at because everything is being taken care of for them. Right? Last part on this work section before we go into property, which is the second topic of the first essay. It says, it is important, however, for African Americans to know that many of our attitudes towards work are a result of our slavery experiences. These negative experiences associated with work continue to function as unconscious influences on us that make us respond in ways which may be contrary to our conscious intention. Awareness of these influences and their source begins to free us from their effects. Our slang, our songs, our jokes, our attitudes transmitted from one generation to the next preserve these reactions as if they were acquired yesterday. Now, all these negative experiences unconsciously have been passed down. Imagine what, if one person's living on welfare, right? Imagine what their parents were doing, or how they were living. Then imagine how their parents were, and then their parents, right? If one person's parent, if my parent was a drug dealer, what was his parent? What was his parents doing if they didn't want to work? What were their parents doing if they didn't want to work? It all gets passed down subconsciously, unconsciously, right? And the only way for us to break out of this is to be conscious of these intentions. Why am I selling drugs? I'm selling drugs because it's easier than working a 9 to 5. I'm selling drugs because I am being provided with a greater amount of income in one day than I would working a 9 to 5 for a week. Why am I gambling? Well, I'm gambling because I have the opportunity to gain a lot more money in one throw of a dice or one flip of a card at the blackjack table to win money that I would take me 2 weeks to make. Why am I on welfare? Because I don't want to work X amount of hours, X amount of days to be able to pay for my rent, which is X amount. To feed my children, which is going to cost this amount. So I would rather have someone pay for my rent. I would rather have someone give me free money to feed myself and my children. We gotta come to the understanding that once we make the decision to actually work, we have to know why we are working. We can't be stuck in the mindset that we are working to benefit someone else. Although it is true, there comes a point in time where we have to invest in owning some type of skill. There comes a point where we have to invest in starting our own business. Because just because you work for Dunkin' Donuts, slaving for 10 years, learning how to make donuts, learning how to make different types of coffee, why can't you open up your own coffee shop and make your own donuts? You already know how to make them. You know what's going to take to keep it running. We just fail to see the benefit of working for ourselves, which overshadows everything that's positive that can come at the end. Being financially stable, being able to provide for our own families, being able to help others. Instead, we can't see that far into the future. We only seeing right here in the present, thinking about the past. All right? Let's go into property. Now, property was in my opinion, a very big part of this. In my opinion, one of the top 3. Right? It says property. And the reason why I say it's like the top 3 for me is because everything we see on social media, on TV, when we walk out into the street, is based on property, right? And whose property we want, whose property we want to be seen as having. The slave master's fine house, beautiful landscaping, exquisite clothes, and objects were associated with his power and status. Who were the first people to drive Lamborghinis? Anyone know? The first type of people to drive Lamborghinis? White people with money. Who was the first people to own all these fancy, humongous castles and houses here in America? White people with money. Who were some of the first people to own gold and fancy jewelry and fancy trinkets and items? White people here in America. Who were some of the first people to wear the most lavish clothing, most beautiful colors, rich purple clothing, right? White people here in America. In the same way that the slave looked upon his master with hatred for slavery and resentment for all the crimes they committed, he also resented and envied the master's possessions, because those possessions were associated with freedom and power to direct one's life, family, and community. Did black people have their own mansions, or were they the slaves of white people who had mansions? Did black people own horses and carriages, or did white people own horse and carriages? Right? Every drug dealer here, every black Hispanic drug dealer wants to be like Italian mobsters and Italian gangsters, right? Nice clothes, eating lobsters and shrimp and pasta, having jewelry, having the best clothes, the best cars, right? The best hats, the most beautiful women. That's what we resented. That's what we were jealous of. Give me that scripture, envy not. Baba Kasha. Right? This is what we envied about our oppressor. This is what we resented from our slave masters, because they had everything imaginable that one could desire, while we were poor, living in disgusting and filthy conditions, wearing the most tattered and broken clothing imaginable. You can put me on the screen, Baba Kasha. Yeah, you can leave it just like that. Read Baba Kasha.
Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 31. Envy thou not the oppressor, and choose none of his way.
It says, envy not thou oppressor. We were jealous of our oppressors because they had everything. They had stability, they had freedom, they can come and go as they please. They didn't have to ask for permission to go to the store. They did whatever they wanted to do. And we associated all these possessions that our master had with freedom. The power to control one's life, their family, their community. Excuse me. And we had none of that. We still don't have none of that. It says African Americans have the slavery influence of mixed attitudes toward material objects and property, which is true. We want the nice Rolling. We want the newest BMW. We want to drive in a Porsche 911 and get a Hellcat, right? We want to fly in G6s across the skies, right? We want to have everything luxurious, that everything luxurious in material and wealth and in image and thought, because our slave masters had them. It says, on one hand, those objects are still associated with the master's power. Therefore, there is a tendency to resent property and to take a secret, unconscious delight in attacking it. Get me a video on YouTube, Abu Shah. Get me black people, Hispanic people vandalizing stores during George Floyd riots. Right? Because who owns these stores? Who owns CVS? Who owns Starbucks? Who owns the majority of McDonald's, right? It's not us. You playing this? Share this tab. It's not being shared.
This is just a snapshot of some of the damage the people will be waking up to in Soho. Through the night, protesters smashed into luxury stores, stealing items and clashing with police. Eyewitness News reporter Derek Waller live in Soho with what's happening right now. Derek?
Some new video that we can show you from overnight of vandals in action.
Looks like a lot of black and
Rioters
Hispanic people.
smashed windows all along Broadway, Spring and West Broadway. High-end stores like Gucci, Versace, Tory Burch broken into and looted. Police believe the destruction is a result of organized anarchists infiltrating peaceful protests, finding areas where police are not present, and causing chaos. We did see some protesters try to confront the vandals. One man even discharged a fire extinguisher, obviously to no avail. There is damage everywhere you look. Honestly, it looks like a war zone. Some rioters also set fires, including a dumpster that was set on fire. And as I just showed you, that unoccupied police vehicle here on Broadway as well. Thankfully, no reports of any injuries there, but protesters were blasted with pepper spray during some tense moments.
I attempted to be a white ally and to put my body in front of the cops. They were using their batons, and a cop just sprayed me. It's my first time being pepper sprayed.
And back out here live, we are at the...
Yeah, good for her. Anyway, you see all the destruction that we were doing, and we don't own Gucci stores. We don't own Louis Vuitton stores. We don't own Birkin stores. We don't own all these luxury stores, right? But this brother is saying that there is a tendency to resent property and take a secret unconscious delight in attacking it. You saw all our people there smiling, crashing, and breaking these windows. There was some type of joy they had in destroying their slave master's property. Certainly, some of our tendencies toward vandalism and abuse of property have their origin in these experiences with property. Property is still viewed as belonging to the master and not to the slave. They weren't destroying the property of black-owned businesses. They were destroying white establishments. Gucci, Louis, Macy's, breaking into Macy's, all these high-end stores that belong to white people. Right? You can make that screen smaller, about show. Perfect. It says, this finds additional expression when the African American is thrown into public housing and rented properties, which are in fact still owned by the descendants of slave masters. You know, all these projects, all these public housing, they're not owned by us, they're owned by America, by the descendants of slave owners. That's whose property you're living in. That's who's paying your rent. Though your slave master's government is paying the rent for your slave master's property that you're sleeping in, that you're laying in. Vandalism is unconsciously gratifying in that it acts out that long-present resentment of master's property. Given the persisting dependence on the master, it is safer to be neglectful of his property than overtly hostile towards him. You know why? Because no one is going to go do this to white people. They will burn down the house. They will smash the windows and set the car on fire. But black and Hispanic people won't dare go harm white people.
Right.
And you shouldn't go harm white people. You also shouldn't go and destroy white people's items. You should love yourself more to not even buy them in the first place. We need to start loving ourselves more to not want to covet the items of our oppressor. Right? It says, on the other hand, slavery produced an unnatural attraction to material objects. The cast-off hat or the dress passed down from the big house to the cabin became a symbol of pride and status. So whenever the master gave away a shirt to one of his slaves, it was looked at as something that you had to have because it was special. It was such a beautiful shirt, unlike any other shirt that any other slave would have. When a dress was being thrown out, the women had to get that dress because it was a dress that was beautiful in their standards. No other slave had this dress, right? It became a symbol of pride and status. So if you were able to get one of your slave master's dresses, you were big amongst the rest of the slaves. If you were able to get that hat that master no longer wanted, then you were looked upon as a special slave. That you were special enough to get this possession from your slave master. And now you can wear it around the other slaves who are all going to envy you, who are all going to look at you in some resentment because now you have this power, this token, this little symbol of wealth. By wearing Massa's old hat or Mrs. old dress, one could play at being Massa or Mrs. for a few fanciful moments. So now you get to pretend that you're the master. And you get to daydream and act, I'm wearing this nice shirt, look how beautiful I am. I'm just like master. Until you were reminded that you were a slave. An illustration of this idea dating back to slavery experience also comes from Stamp, again, who wrote The Peculiar Institution, Slavery in the Antebellum South. He states, the elegantly dressed slaves who promenaded the streets of southern towns and cities on Sundays, the men in fine linens and bright waistcoats. The women in full petticoats and silk gowns were usually the domestic servants of wealthy planters or townspeople. Butlers, coachmen, maids, and valets had to uphold the prestige of their white families. So because you were a house slave, a house Negro, you got to, you had more access to the discarded items, the items no longer wanted by your slave master, and then you got to walk around town wearing them as if you were special, because you had to uphold the image of your slave master's house. These material objects, or dregs of property, became equated in the African American's thinking with the full power of freedom and self-determination which the master enjoyed. Now, having master's old hat and Mrs. old dress tricks your mind and tricks everyone else's mind that you're free, that you have some type of power that is equal to your slave master, when it doesn't. Just because you drive around in a BMW like the slave master doesn't mean you have white privilege. Just because you own a house that you paid $500,000 for doesn't mean you're as equal to those living in Beverly Hills. Just because you get to fly first class in the very front seats of JetBlue and American Airlines doesn't mean you have the same status or power as other white people who are flying in the same position, flying the same seats. White people own the airlines, black people don't. Right? White people own car manufacturing plants, black people don't. We can observe a similar pattern in our developing children who play at being mama and daddy by putting on objects of their clothing or other objects associated with them. So he's saying by you putting on your slave master's shirt and dress and pretending to be them is the same as your children playing mommy and daddy in dress up. That's what he's equating the two as, because it makes sense. Your son and daughter are not really mommy and daddy, but they put on dad's shirt and mom's high heels, and now they think they're mom and dad playing house. You put on your slave master's shirt and your slave master's dress, and now you think you're the slave master when you're not. What time is it? 8:48. Okay. The legacy of such experience with property and materials has made these objects powerfully influential in our lives. Large sums of money are thrown away yearly on expensive, flashy clothes and cars, which is true. All the money that we spend on trying to drive a BMW and a Lexus and a Mercedes Benz and a Rolls Royce, all the clothes we drive, like red bottoms, right? Apple bottom jeans, and trying to have Birkin bags and riding around and wearing True Religion clothing, right? Getting all the name brand designer stuff, we waste money. Uncomfortable, impractical, and showy items of furniture drain our budgets and fail to satisfy our longings because of this persistent wish to look like the slave master. When you're trying to get solid marble counters, spending unnecessary money when you can just have a wooden counter or a granite counter, just think about it. I remember when my parents bought our first home, I could never understand why spend all this money on a marble countertop. It weighed a ton just to get it into a house, right? For what? How much? Like, I never knew how much it cost, but how much did that cost? What could we have done instead of purchasing that marble countertop? Aisha, look up the average cost of a marble countertop. And I'm not saying this is just some plain white marble. I'm talking about it had a gray, brown, tan, black, white spiral design. I'm like, how much did this thing cost? I'm seeing some pretty high prices.
around $60 per square foot, or more than $100 for high grade marble per square foot. So that'd be about $2,000 to $5,000.
My parents spent $2,000 to $5,000 on that. You know what they could have done? They could have just bought me an Apple laptop that I needed for college instead of the Dell. Because I hated that Dell. You know how much work I probably would have done when every time my Dell kept crashing every other day. I could have had and I kept telling them my school was Apple sponsored, so we had Apple technicians at our school that could have helped me with my computer. But instead I had Dell. I had to ship it out and wait X amount of days for it to get to wherever it was sent to, then wait for the days to fix it, then wait for days to ship it out. When you could have just spent $2,000 to $5,000 on an Apple laptop that I asked for, instead of $439 for the Dell Inspiron heavy ass, laptop that I absolutely despise. You know what I'm saying? But I digress. But that much money is absurd. Why is there a need to spend up to, and that's the minimal cost. Like just this podium that's right here, we built this podium in here. And when I was researching on how to make river tables and epoxy tables, these things can go up to like $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. Like, to estimate the amount of materials that we spent on this was a minimum of about $1,500. Then the labor that we would put onto this, like this podium we could easily sell it for like $6,000, $7,000. Considering how heavy it is, $7,000 right here. You know what we can do with $7,000? $7,000 can start a business. Can help you get things rolling in your own, starting your own LLC. It could have been used for all types of more meaningful things, except, unfortunately, uncomfortable, impractical, and showy items of furniture drain our budgets and fail to satisfy our longings because of this persistent wish to look like the slave master, all because keeping up with the Joneses, they had all the nice stuff. Driving around BMWs, having all these type of things, and getting their lawns mowed every week, and their hedges trimmed in the shape of animals. Like, who really cares about stuff like that? But a slave does. Many of our judgments about people and their worth are disproportionately determined by what these people own or wear. Listen, I don't know about y'all, but in the era I grew up with, if you did not own ACGs, the type of Nike boots, you were poor. If you weren't wearing Ralph Lauren polo, if you didn't have that little Ralph Lauren, put those designs up there, Lacoste, right? You didn't have that little green alligator on your polo shirt, and you had an Old Navy plain polo, you were poor. If you didn't have that little Lacoste or the Nautica symbol on your polo shirt, you were poor. If you weren't wearing a Chanel belt or a Gucci belt or have Louis Vuitton slippers, you were poor. And that is what gives a person of a perceived reputation or status based on the things that you either own or don't own. Type in Lacoste and Ralph Lauren polo shirts. Polos like that. Yeah, if you didn't have the little man on the horse on your shirt, you were poor. If you didn't have that little alligator on your shirt, you were poor. If you didn't have the Nautica little sailboat, you were poor. That Gucci symbol, you were poor. That's the era I grew up in. I can't imagine the other generations before me what was considered to be high class or not. But this is my era here in the 90s and the early 2000s, right? It says, we spend great energy and wealth acquiring these objects associated with power rather than actual human, social, political, and economic power, which is true. Why would I want to go buy a Lacoste shirt and spend $100-something when I don't even own the company Lacoste? Why am I going to go spend a minimum of $45K on the new BMW when I don't own a car manufacturing plant? Why am I gonna go and buy a mansion, right? Buy a 5-bedroom house when I need to take out a loan from the bank? I can't just buy it outright, and I still gotta pay the mortgage to the bank every month. I don't own that house until it's finally paid off. I don't even own the land, because if I don't pay my taxes, the government's gonna come and take the land. What sense is that? We have no human, social, political, or economic power because we focus on all these things that have no meaning in life. Walking around with the newest Jordans means nothing. Absolutely. It costs like $10 to make a pair of Jordans, and you're over here killing each other over Jordans. It makes no sense for us to be trying to drive the latest car when all that car does, it takes us from point A to point B. Your feet do that for free, right? It says there is a frequent tendency to confuse tokens of power with genuine power based upon the slave experience. Because once again, if you have Mrs. Dress, that little token gave you some type of power. Having Master's old shirt gave you a token, that little small trinket of power that every other slave looked upon as something of value. What time is it? Last part, and then we're going to end class. We're going to have to do, like I said, this is going to have to be a couple of part series, because we only got into the introduction and the first essay, which we only went into 2 topics, right? This is the end of property. It is not unusual for concerted efforts to obtain real political and economic power to be prematurely aborted by a strategic dispensation of tokens. The movie, I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, right? The part where the brother's going into the Black Power place, the Black Power store, and he's like, where's everyone else at? Well, the government, the so and such was hiring that day, so they all went and got jobs. Pull that skit up, Baba Shah. Find that skit up, because when I was reading this, that was the first thing that came to my mind. When I read this portion, that was the first thing that came to my mind, right? It is not unusual for concerted efforts to obtain real political and economic power, right? We have seen over time where people have come together and start to get real power, buying land, making businesses, but only to be prematurely aborted by strategic dispensation of tokens. Right, go back up. I think it's down right there. I'll get you sucker. Play that, Baba Shah. Share that, please, and raise the volume on YouTube.
My great Nubian warrior, dinner's ready.
We have a guest. Eat Milo May Wish.
Pause it right here. Pause it. Now this will be a token. This will be a token of power. A black man being given or having a white woman. Because what did the slave master have? A white woman. Token number 1. Keep going.
Would you like to stay for dinner?
She makes the best bean dishes in all the world.
Pause it. Another thing that we want to have. We want to have babies that look like this. We envy blonde hair and the blue eyes and the green eyes and the red hair because that's what our slave master wants. So what do? We want to marry a woman with straight hair or light eyes, because then our children can have straighter hair or lighter eyes. As a black or Hispanic woman, they want to go marry a white man because they can have better hair, lighter eyes, and that's what they want their children to look like. Keep going.
Oh, great Black King, I finished my homework. Can you watch TV?
Let me hear your report.
Okay. Abraham Lincoln was born in a log cabin in Illinois. This poor white trash went on to become president of the United States. Once in office, this white capitalist swine manipulated the freedom of the black man for his own political
am very pleased. Yes, you and your lovely sister, you may go and watch TV. Go and enjoy. Are you sure, my brother? You will not join us?
No.
Oh, bean ice cream?
Thanks, I'm regular.
I think it was the same scene, but before that. Damn. Wait. Is it this? Stop. Okay, perfect. Okay.
Hello? Hello? Is anybody here?
Yes, my brother. How may I help?
Yeah, are you Kalinga, leader of the People's Revolutionary Army?
Are you CIA?
No.
I am Kalinga.
I need to talk to you.
Yes. Have a seat. Would you care for something to eat? A bean pie, perhaps?
No, I'm not hungry.
Something to drink. Please sit down. Herb tea. A soda.
Okay, soda's fine.
Articulate your needs. I'm here to listen. How may I help you?
Well, first of all,
It's an acquired taste. Now, how may I help you, my brother?
look, I'm here because I can't stand what's happening in this community.
Yes!
Yeah, and somebody has to make a change.
Yes!
Now, brother, will you help me?
Yes! Well! I wish I could.
Damn it, man, I heard the People's Revolutionary Army was once 1,000 strong. Now, what happened?
They got government jobs.
What?
You know that government office building on 25th Street?
Yeah?
He went down to take it over. But they were hiring that day. The brothers walked in with guns. Came out with jobs. The brothers weren't mad anymore. Yes. Whitey is something else.
And there you have it. They're making fun of it, but that's what we're talking about here in this book, in this essay. Realistically, assertive efforts to alter social structures to equitably accommodate America's former slaves have frequently been terminated by offering limited material goods to the major strategists and movement, and then the movement dies. The major thinkers and scholars, potentially our most powerful agents of change in African American communities, are often neutralized by a pittance of material goods, like giving a black man a job, giving a black man a white woman, his own blonde hair, blue eyes woman, right? This social destructive phenomena has its roots deep in slavery experience. Too often, the leaders in our communities have equated a small trinket of material gain with having arrived or having made it in life. That leadership is soon lost to the African American community. It is a recurrence of the old image of wearing masses' discarded hat and thinking that you are massive. All right, listen, it's 9:04. Listen, I'm glad everyone is still here, but we're gonna have to pick this up next Monday in part 2. Part 2, we're gonna go into Part 2, we're gonna go into leadership. We're gonna go into the clown, and if we can, we're gonna try to go into personal inferiority. But we might end up having to make a part 3 and a part 4 out of this. But listen, I want to thank everyone who stayed and watched. Make sure you shared the class. We have been reviewing Brother Naim Akbar's essays that he wrote called The Chains and Images of Psychological Slavery, written by Naim Akbar, Ph.D., who's a clinical psychologist. So thank you for this brother for doing this amazing work. It's definitely going to be useful in teaching the truth to Black and Hispanic people. And with that, I'm Precinct Officer Shakapan. Joining me is Precinct Officer Ashayala. I got Brother T in the building. And to all the brothers and sisters that tuned in for this history class, The water. Shalom, Yahweh Bashim Shar Baruch